Disrupted.
Welcome to the Author Spotlight. On this episode, we have Lori Zoss and her book, Under Caution, which is a romantic suspense. Hi,
Yes,
Lori.
thanks for
Thanks for
having
being on
me.
the show.
Great, thank you.
Why don't you let me and the listeners know why we should read your book?
Well, I'm an avid reader. I love to read fiction. I love to read adult fiction of all kinds, but especially suspense. And I took it from the point of view of the type of reader that I am. So I'm a busy entrepreneur. I like to read on airplanes, and I like to read something that's going to get me in fast and get me out. But it's going to give me enough that I can fantasize for a while, right? I can submerge myself into a completely new world, but I don't have a lot of time to build into a story. I want you to get me right in. So that's how Under Caution is really written. I have a strong prologue that gets you right into, who the villain is, and you get to know my characters really fast, and it's written with a very fast pace. So I have a lot of rich dialogue, and I've just had a lot of feedback from readers that, wow, I read this in like 2 days. Or I do like to say that for busy women who do travel, you can fly from New York to LA and you can finish the book. It's about 60,000 words. And my chapters are specifically short. And I know, like, for me, when I'm reading fiction, I like to feel accomplished in what I've read. So I specifically wrote short chapters with more frequent chapters because I just feel people like to feel accomplished when they read. And I never want you to feel like if you're reading late at night that, oh gosh, I want to finish this chapter, but I keep like falling asleep, right? That shouldn't be an issue here for the most part because, it just keeps going. So, in terms of the why, I think that if you are kind of a busy person and you're really trying to bring more reading into your life, this is a great option for you. It's a great option any time of year that you're looking for something to kind of escape quickly. And it's got a really good balance of suspense and of romance. So the core idea of the book, it's centered around Daisy Cray, who is a successful stock car driver. The winningest female that's ever been in stock car driving. And she has an on again, off again romance with her biggest competitor, Jackson Wyatt. But the suspense part of the story really comes in from a formal rival who has it out for her and is trying to hunt her down. And his name is Lumen Ross. And he also has a very, very healthy knowledge of AI and uses it to his advantage
Ooh.
to try to capture her and try to take over her world. So there's a lot going on. You've got the romance, you've got the suspense, and there's some fun stuff in it too. I like to write some sub characters that provide a little comic relief. And the reaction's been great. I've gotten a lot of great reviews in the sense of people just like the pace of the book, and they like that it's a little more than just your typical suspense romance. There really is a message about female empowerment in it as well. So those are maybe a couple reasons that you might want to read it. So, but we'll get you in and out quick, but
No,
you'll
I was
like
just
it.
say we on Book Interrupted often talk about the love of small chapters,
Yes,
especially if you're busy. Like
yes,
the fact that you can just quickly whip out a chapter and then
yeah.
go back to things you need to do, because it's really hard when some of these chapters are just like,
Oh
and you're
yeah,
busy. They're like, okay, I'll just wait till night. I'll just wait. So then that book
yes,
takes forever to get through because if it's short, quick chapters, you can quickly read a chapter, go make dinner, take care of the
yep,
kids,
exactly.
whatever task you need to do, and then quickly go back and read another chapter. Um,
Yes.
yeah, it's so great when they're quick chapters. I also read a review about your the male lead. I read a
Ah,
little bit of
yes.
your book as
Yeah, oh,
well.
good, good.
So it was quick. I was like, after I read the second chapter, I was like, because you sent me a link for your YouTube station that the audiobook, you give a little taste, a teaser of the audiobook on your
Yes,
YouTube station. So I listened to
that's right.
that.
Yes.
And when I finished chapter two, I was like, oh, wait, oh, that's it. Shoot. So
You
I
got to
will
come
be
back for
picking up
more.
your, yeah, exactly. So I will be picking up your audiobook on Apple for sure
Great, great.
and checking that out. Um, but I read some reviews about Jackson, and there's one lady wrote, which I thought was so funny. She was like, do men like Jackson really even exist? Because
Yes,
she was
I
like,
remember
I
that.
wish.
Yes, and I think that
Yeah,
that's why it's fiction. No.
she could escape. Yeah.
That's why I can create a world however I want it, right?
Yeah.
So the whole idea is for busy women to escape. Does he
Yeah.
really exist? Probably somewhere, but I happen to have the power of creating the gentleman that I wanted to compliment Daisy.
No, that was great. No, the reviewer gave you a 5 star. She was like,
Yes,
hope.
yes,
She was like,
I
that's
know.
why my wish.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes. Yeah.
it's about race cars. Like, so why did you make that I was just curious why you made
Yeah,
that
sure.
drop? The
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to make sure people understand racing is just the backdrop. It's not about racing. It just happens
No,
to be
no.
the environment she's in. So
Yes.
I'm a big sports fan, huge sports fan. And I really wanted to create a character, a female heroine that could compete in a sport against male peers. There's not many options, but there is in race car driving. And specifically, I chose stock car driving, which is the larger cars. People might know it as kind of like NASCAR.
Yeah, NASCAR. Yeah.
So I wanted to specifically find a sport where a woman could compete with a man on the same track, for lack of a better term. And I knew a little about stock car driving and then started watching more of it. I went to a stock car driving event in Nashville, which happens to be where a big portion of where my story takes place at the Nashville Speedway. So I thought it was perfect because it was able to kind of reflect my love of sport and put my heroine in a situation where she is kind of one of the best drivers in her sport, full of men. And how do people deal with that? And that does come up as a dynamic, even though it is suspense romance, it does come up as quite a little bit of a dynamic with the relationship with Jackson. And I just loved kind of delving into it. And then just the whole idea of speed, it kind of really also reflected how I like to write. So when you are in a very fast situation with cars, it's like a fast situation with the reading, and it just really worked well with what I wanted to accomplish.
So I really liked it because a lot of times romances, they have that like, she's a cook or,
Right.
like they're doing very domestic or very feminine angled
Yes.
jobs, and that's where it came up. Like, I
Yes.
really like that idea of like a strong female killer, and he's not saving her. She's the
That's right.
champion, right? She's the lead.
That's
So
right.
I really like that dynamic just
Thank
as a
you.
like as
Yeah.
a woman, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
um,
thank you. That was with intention. Definitely. That was definitely with intention that I did that. Yeah. Because you can be a strong woman and still deserve a strong, romantic interest in your life. You can have both.
yes, right? And I think that we need more strong female characters
Yeah.
that because it wasn't like the way you wrote the intro, it wasn't something that seemed absurd. Like her dad, this is her dad's business. So
Right.
obviously she knows all about it and she knows how to fix cars and it's her
Yes.
life. That's just
Yeah.
normal.
Yes.
And then you normalized it so it wasn't like an issue, but I like that it's the background because that's real life. I actually had growing up the exactly same situation. One of our neighbors, he was a race car driver,
Oh,
and his daughter Penny took over his car when he
oh
retired.
wow.
So,
There you go.
right, it's real. That's true.
Yeah.
Those things happen. But I feel like we don't, or we're not represented that way
Yeah.
all the time. And it's important, representation is important in
Yeah.
even fiction,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. I completely agree. And, I do like to read romance suspense. And there was never something for me that had that. You know, I've had somebody said, Lori, your book is like a mix of Colleen Hoover and The Fast and the Furious. Like, oh, I kind of like that. Okay, that works out well. So I'll
I like
take
that too.
that.
Yeah, that's great. No, I
Oh
like that
yeah.
too. Wonderful. So, Lori, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey going from the corporate boardroom to self-publishing your first romance novel.
Yeah, so it's really a journey about balance. So, I have worked in corporate sponsorship, specifically working with nonprofit organizations, other purpose-driven organizations to help them find sponsorship dollars or philanthropic dollars, or for creators, people creating movies or creating projects, helping them find funding for that. And I still do that. But I used to do it on behalf of people, on behalf of other companies. Like I worked with public broadcasting, NPR and PBS, and I worked with, other larger organizations. And back in 2018, I decided to make the switch to being an entrepreneur and started my own company, Growth Owl, which helps organizations do what I just described, help them align to connect with decision makers to get the funding they need. So while I was on this entrepreneurial journey, I've always had this real yearning to write adult fiction. Now, in the past, I have written a children's book called A Bed for Fred. I wrote that 12 years ago. And then a couple years earlier, I wrote a business book called The Boardroom Playbook, which is about getting corporate funding. But I've always had these stories inside of me, and I would keep a journal of just kind of running stories. And I just made the decision, I need to get this out of me. I need to write. So my journey is really about being an entrepreneur and finding the time and having the discipline to start writing, even when you have a lot going on in your life, right? With both personally and with your business. So really the journey for me was, really deciding on what my story was going to be, and then just building in the discipline of I was writing every night, between 7 p.m. and maybe 10 p.m. And just whether it was good or bad, I wrote. There are times where you sit down and you write and there's, a few minutes of content, and there are other days there's like lots of content. And no matter what was going on, I was trying to write at least 3 or 4 times a week. So the journey for me was about the balance that you can do both if you have the discipline to do it. And the journey in terms of choosing self-publishing, I had self-published my business book. I had went with traditional publishing for my children's book. And as I looked at both, and because of my background as an entrepreneur and being a business person, I just really felt, you know what, I could do this on my own. Because to be quite frank, when I worked with a publisher, I can't say I was all that impressed. There was a lot that fell on me anyway, and that I felt I could do better. And I liked owning the business process. Not every person likes that, but for me, that worked. So that's a lot, in a nutshell, kind of what the journey was in terms of balance and just building in the discipline to get it done.
We've had on Book Interrupted, one of our members from that podcast,
Yeah.
they had a similar experience
Ah,
with working with publishers. So
yeah. Yeah. And
yeah,
everyone's
yeah.
experience is different. I don't think there's one wrong or right way. It's what works for you.
We actually have someone wrote a blog post actually on one of our blogs on bookinterrupted.com that talks about self-publishing and the difference.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
heard that you end up doing a lot of the work anyway when you work with publishers. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. That's a good
Yeah.
perspective. One of the main questions I want to ask, because I want to kind of go back to, you know, you're entrepreneur, you started
Yeah.
your own business, you went from the, executive boardroom working for someone else. So how, I want to get a little bit more into, because you said
Sure.
worked, you did this book like in the evenings when you had time. So
Yes.
I kind of want to touch on that point because
Yes.
creativity is so important,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, for being your authentic self. So if you could touch
Yes.
a little bit on balancing like your creative passions with like running your own business, because I think a lot of times women generally we take on so much, and then
Yeah.
we read a book on Book Interrupted called The 4% Fix,
Hmm.
and I've brought this up a lot because
Yeah.
what she says is, she's a writer, Canadian writer.
Yeah.
She said to take the first slice of cake for
Okay.
yourself.
Oh, I
So
like that.
hers is like a kind of like personal growth. She is a writer and writes a whole bunch of books, and someone told her to write a nonfiction, and she
Yeah.
wrote it about in the morning. It doesn't matter. She writes, that's what she does in the mornings. But
Yeah.
she's saying you have to take a slice for yourself. And
Right.
she suggests the morning because she's like, if you don't take it in the morning, maybe you don't do it. But it's important
Yes.
that you have a slice for you,
Yeah.
or like, what are we doing? Like, we're
Right.
constantly taking on all these responsibilities, mental load and all these things. And then we don't have any left for us. And I
That's
think
right.
creativity is the most important. You're expressing yourself.
Yeah.
That's your authentic self. It's not something you're trying to accomplish
Yeah.
necessarily. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about how you balanced out like doing your creative project on top of, running your business
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
making money and all those things.
Yeah. The hardest part is getting started. I think anybody will tell you that because once you're in the rhythm, I find that, you're in the rhythm. But getting started and creating the discipline to write is imperative because you could have an idea, but it stays in the ether forever, right? And I had a little journal of ideas that I would write down. And I finally just kept going back to this idea about, you know, a woman in the race car world. She's kind of involved with her biggest rival. And then here comes this villain. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna work with that. And I'll tell you, I think what helped me was, quite frankly, I was on the precipice of my 50th birthday. And it was a goal. I want to get this done before my 50th birthday. So for some of it for me was just in the time of life that I'm in, this was a goal I really wanted to accomplish because I've had so many start and stops with adult fiction over the years. And it's like, okay, this is the time. So I had that goal. And then in terms of the discipline of how to write, I wrote at night. But the funny thing is, I am a morning person. But what I found was I couldn't really write in the morning because I was thinking about all the things I needed to do in my business.
Right.
But so for me, it was easier once the day was done. I've had my dinner and it's quiet. And then around 7 o'clock, I'd come up to my office and then I'd start writing. But before I started writing the actual chapters, I am a big fan of an outline and I am a fan of working backwards. So there's all different theories on, outlining or, save the cat, all that, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what works for me is I knew how I wanted to start the story. I knew what was going to be the pivotal,
Right.
I knew what my red herring was, and I knew how this was going to end. So I decided to start with an outline first of what needs to happen to get to these pivotal moments and then and I visualize it almost like a movie. I'm very, visual.
Yeah.
Then I wrote it the complete opposite. I went backwards. And do I get to the same place? And it's funny in outlining that way, where I have two different outlines, I had different things come up that when I brought it together, I'm like, oh, this is good. This is great. So I had an outline. So I never came to my laptop, my computer blind. I knew I had kind of a prompt where I
Right.
needed to go. So some nights I would write, and maybe it was just a longer day, and I would just kind of write phrases. Here's what I want to happen in this chapter, almost being a director. Here's what I want to happen.
Yeah.
Other nights, I would be extremely specific. I've got dialogue in my head, I've got narrative. So I would write more specifically. So there were nights where maybe I wrote for 20 minutes to a half hour, and there were other nights where I was cranking it out. I went from like 7 to 10. That was the discipline I used, and I would write for 3 or 4 times a week. I also would write if I was traveling. I do travel in my business, and I'll write when I'm in my hotel room. And it actually works to your advantage because I had a couple of instances in the book where there's travel going on. So I'm physically traveling. So I'm in that mindset. So
Right.
that kind of worked out really nice. So that my biggest advice is that outline however you want to outline. And there are great books out there. There are great theories on how to write a suspense romance, whatever. But you want something that you're not going to be too fixated on it. I think sometimes with some of these, you know, kind of frameworks for how to write best, people can get too fixated on it and then they don't do anything. Okay, well, you're chapter 3
Yeah.
by then. This should happen. I'm like, well, no,
Yeah.
let's just kind
On
of let
this
it
page,
flow.
yeah.
Right, exactly.
On this page, this has to happen. That's Save the Cat.
That's
Like this
exactly
page,
right.
it has to happen. And you're like, what?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that I just kind of went in with a no rules approach, and I
Mhm.
knew at the front of when I was writing, I was not going to be taking this to agents or to publishers. So that also brought me freedom. Like I can write this however the heck I want.
Yeah.
So, for instance, my book it does shift point of view, but it does stay in third person narrative. So there is kind of a point of view shift on each chapter, but it sticks within some core characters. There are some agents or publishers that would be against that. I think it works.
Mhm.
I like to have different scenarios going on in different perspective, but I make it very known up front as you get into the book. It's like not like there's guesswork, but there are some people that are extremely against that. So that's their call. But again, knowing that I was going to self-publish, I didn't have to worry about these kinds of rules. So that was freeing to me. So I can't speak from the perspective of if you think you're going to shop it around to a traditional publisher, but I do feel as though if you just kind of let go of what you think you should do and just start writing, even if it's just phrases, that's going to get you into this cadence of writing. And when you're not doing it, you're going to feel like, oh, I need to do that. And in terms of time of day, again, I think it's just what works best for you. I do like that analogy. You need your slice of cake. But I think I knew myself well enough that I could have my slice of cake much later in the day
Mhm.
and still be effective.
Yeah. There
Yeah.
was one of the other members of Book Interrupted. She's a writer, but she's also has the sleep type of wolf. So she's not a morning
Oh,
person. So she would
yeah.
never write anything in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's when we interviewed the author, and she was like, whenever works for you, but you need to take a slice. And I think that the fact that you're like, okay, so I have to do this at least 3 times a week.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's amazing because a lot of, you know, productivity hacks and stuff are like, if you
Yeah.
can make a commitment, maybe you do 5 days that week or 7 days, but you've
Yeah.
committed to yourself for three. And the fact that you let yourself off the hook, that you could just do the 20 minutes of not actually really going at it, but like saying, okay, I want this to look like this because it's
Yes.
still working on your project and
That's
it's
right.
still committing to yourself, but at the same time, it's not making this steadfast rule that I'm big on productivity hacks.
Yeah.
Um,
Good. Yeah.
and but I do find also that if you make it too rigid,
Yes.
and you break those promises to yourself, then you just end up quitting, never
That's
finishing
right.
because
Yep.
you've already done it so many times.
Yes.
That doesn't, yeah. So I think that's,
Absolutely.
yeah, for
Yeah.
anyone doing a creative project. Yeah.
I think the whole message is time is not about quantity, it's about quality. So if you really frame it that way, we as human beings tend to do better with small, achievable goals. So maybe when you start the process, maybe your goal is just to write once a week for 20 minutes, and then you build it up from there, right? Look, there's no. Sometimes writers feel like a time crunch. Now, unless you have a deadline from someone, which is completely different, if you are kind of writing this on your own, work within your peak times of day and give yourself grace and space, right? Because I don't think there's anything worse than just sitting there and staring at the screen and creating a discipline that, well, I have to stay and sit here, but nothing's coming. That's going to make it worse. I just knew myself and I know myself well enough when I'm not in the zone. So when it's like that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a commitment. Here's what I want to write next time. And I'll type in, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. That much you can get done. Your brain will allow that.
Yeah.
And then you walk away, you come back the next day or 2 days later, and you start working on it with a fresh set of eyes, and it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneurial strategist. So some of my clients,
Yeah.
one of the things I say to them is when you're writing a to-do list, like launching an enterprise,
Yes.
You got to put things on the to-do list that are really easy for you to accomplish, because
Yes, that is so
you
true.
only put big ones, you won't get through the list. But let's say you're having a really stressful day or a big thing happens. If you have something
Yes.
really easy, just start doing the easy ones, because just
Yes.
checking off the list gives you
Yes.
the momentum you need to keep going.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't
Yeah.
launch. It
And
just
even don't worry
crashes down.
about, I don't know if you're of other authors you've spoke with have talked about this, but don't worry about writing an order either. If there's a certain chapter that makes you excited, work on it. Um, I
Yeah.
kind of start in order, but then if I've got something in my craw, as they like to say, that, oh, I got to work, there's something I got to work out. Um, I'll start writing it, maybe just, a couple paragraphs. Maybe they don't even make sense. But
Yeah.
then at least my mind has processed it, went away, and I can come back to it. So also don't get hung up on order. I think outline order is important, but once you're in the writing process, kind of just go with what feels right for you in that moment.
Yeah, that's a good, I think that's good advice as well.
Yeah.
And also from, I took a master class with Margaret Atwood. I don't know.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
No, 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 on master class. I was
That's
with her.
okay. That's great. I love
Still,
it.
I love her. What she says is, no one's going to see the first draft but you anyway.
That's right.
So
That's so
stop being
true.
so hung up on it. Like,
Yes.
just write it. Like, the different order is a good idea. I think
Yes.
whatever moves you, write that,
Yes.
and then you can change anything whenever you want. No one's
That's
going to
right.
see that first draft anyway. Just
That's
you.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I went through because I hired in the process two different editors. I hired a copy editor specifically for the right periods, spelling, word choice, all that logistical stuff. And then I hired an editor just to look for the holes and, what did she like? What did she not like? And they were both excellent investments. So the version of the book that's published is probably the sixth or seventh edit. So Stephen King says that in his book on writing. Don't be afraid of a good edit, which I think is funny because his books are so long, right?
Yeah. No, seriously. No, but I agree. Like, I think that's another thing that people don't realize when they're doing self-publishing, that editing is part of that
Oh,
too.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's not your first draft just out into the
I
ether,
mean,
so
you
don't
could
feel
if you
bad.
wanted, but if you
You
want to be
could,
taken
but
seriously, right?
yeah.
You do need to put an investment in finding a good editor, and there's so many resources now online where you can find editors, and of course word of mouth, what have you. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of really investing in a really good edit, and you got to take your ego out of it and make decisions that, at the end of the day, you're the decision maker in terms of self publishing. I would say that in terms of my editor's comments, I took 98% of what they recommended. Maybe there was a small 2%. I'm like, no, that's got to stay in.
Right.
Or they'd give me a different perspective. I'm like, no, that doesn't feel right. But for the most part, they were spot on.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about Growth Owl,
Sure.
and then we can, yeah, wrap it up.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
So I started Growth Owl back in 2018 after a very successful career in public media. So if you're in the States, public media would be PBS, NPR. I
Okay.
actually managed a group of 8 account managers and myself. I was the director. We went out and we would find funding for the programming that you see or that you hear on PBS and NPR for clusters of stations, and specifically worked with corporations. So finding corporations to fund productions of shows, sponsor shows, events, what have you. So I loved my work. I absolutely loved working in public media, but I always thought to myself, gee, it would really be great if I could translate the success I had there with other types of people and organizations, like not just public broadcasting, but what other nonprofits could I possibly help? What other purpose-driven organizations can I help? Right now, actually, I've been doing a lot more work with creatives, working with voiceover artists, working with producers and helping them connect with the right decision makers to find funding or to influence, get relationships, what have you. So that's what Growth Owl does. So we help kind of find and help make those connections for you or train you on how to make those connections. And then once you kind of get in the door for those big meetings, kind of coach you through how to work through that. I also do that work on behalf of clients if needs be. And I also do a lot in the area of working with workshops and training for a myriad of topics around sales and accessing decision makers. So I'm very blessed to have great clients and continuing to build my business. I do a lot of public speaking in the association in the nonprofit world and podcasts, as well as now doing a lot more podcasts about my writing, which is a lot of fun. And I do want to say this about writing in relation to my business. I found that when I started to really put in the practice of writing continually, not only did it help me with balance, but it helped me process my day. And let me tell you why. So maybe I had a really rough day, something happened in the business sense. I could play that out in my fictional world and write about it,
Right.
or take attributes of things that I've seen or happened that day that maybe really frustrated me, and I'm going to put them into my villain. It really helps you. It's like therapy. It helps you kind of work out what's going on. So while you are building this world that you hope people want to enter for a little bit, you also are kind of utilizing it to your advantage to kind of work out your own stuff, And I just found that I was a happier entrepreneur and more balanced entrepreneur when I was writing. So I'm actually in the process of starting to outline the second book because I do see this as a trilogy. So I am starting to outline that and getting excited about kind of the pen to paper and keyboard to screen work again. So
I was going to ask you that because some of the reviews said there's a cliffhanger. Uh,
yes.
so yeah, that's great. So it's going to be a trilogy. Wonderful.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yeah.
you're just starting to write the second book.
I'm
So,
just starting to outline the second. Yes, correct.
okay.
So, and it's funny because I know how I want this to end. Like, what is the ultimate end? I know more about book 3 than I know about book 2. And so I have to remind myself because I'm really excited about what I want to do in 3, but I have to remind myself that book 2 needs to be a pivotal bridge and still have that kind of force and speed. And so I'm kind of working on all of that. So
To get people to the 3. Yeah.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So do you have any idea when you think that might come out? Just at a,
Your timing is really good. I was thinking about that. So,
okay.
I'm outlining now, but at the same time I'm outlining, I'm doing publicity for the book and the audiobook, which is being released. So I'm balancing those two things. But what's good about that is, especially in conversations I've had specifically about the audiobook, I'm listening and I'm going back. So some of the details that maybe I would have not thought of right away, I'm reminding myself, I'm like, oh, okay, great. So that helps me as I'm outlining the second book. So being in kind of the promotional phase of Under Caution while I'm outlining book 2, I think is actually very helpful in my outlining strategy. So with all that being said, I think that I do want to take, most of the summer to probably outline and start to play around with some things. And then, that'll take me to the end of the year. So maybe like mid 2027.
Okay,
Let's
great.
see. We'll see. I'll come back and we'll see how well my
Yeah.
I did on that.
Let us know, and I can always
I
update.
will. I will. Thank you.
Okay, listeners. So if you'd like to pick up Lori's book, Under Caution, you can find it on the Book Interrupted website, www.bookinterrupted.com/shop, and it'll be in our shop there, and you can just click on it and pick up her book. And I will also put a link in the show notes for the YouTube if someone wants to listen to the audio book there. And it's also available on audiobook on Amazon as well. Great. Thank you so much, Lori, for being on the show.
Thank you, Sarah. I enjoyed our time together today.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
and we're gonna talk it out on Book Interrupted.